Hi there. My name is Mike, and I am the rector of the Episcopal Church of the Holy Communion, which is right here. Well, it's right here and it's not. For the last 9 months, we've not been able to gather as a congregation in this space, and that's not changing anytime soon. And yet, even while we have had to be physically distant from one another, we've had a number of people who have joined Holy Communion, who have joined in our prayer, in our worship, even in our service to our wider world and our work for justice. And it is a privilege to get to be a priest with such a congregation. I want to introduce you to a class that we call Pilgrimage at Holy Communion. Pilgrimage is a class specifically for newcomers and for seekers, people who are new to Holy Communion or new to this, what our presiding bishop likes to call the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement. I like that language, the idea that as a people we are part of a movement. I think that that has been especially true for many of us these recent months. As the virus has kept us away from our building, we've had to think, what does it mean to be a church? What does it mean to be a person of faith? What does it mean when the old and easy answers don't hold anymore? What does it mean to be a part of a church when you can't just show up on a Sunday morning, when it takes more than that? Pilgrimage started right about the time that I started as priest here at Holy Communion. And over the course of a little over 5 years, probably 100+ people have been through the class. And part of what we have noticed is that a lot of people that come to Holy Communion, a lot of people that come through the pilgrimage class, this isn't their first rodeo. It's okay if this is the first time you have thought about being part of a community of faith, the first time you've thought about engaging your spiritual life. Pilgrimage is open for you. But most people who take the pilgrimage class are folks who have come from another tradition. One of the things about becoming Episcopalian, or even just taking your faith more seriously, is that you always carry with you the places that you have been. If you grew up in a Lutheran tradition, you're always going to respond in a certain way to certain Lutheran hymns. If you grew up in a Roman Catholic tradition, you're always going to have your reactions to Mary and the Rosary, and all of that is okay. It's something that you will be carrying with you on your journey, even if at the end of this you choose to get confirmed by the bishop or received into the Anglican tradition, even if you choose to formally join the Episcopal Church and Holy Communion, you carry that with you. Because so many people come from other traditions to the Episcopal Church, it can be tempting to think of the Episcopal Church as the promised land, as the place that you meant to get to. And that can be a little bit dangerous. Why do I say it can be a little bit dangerous? A friend of mine is a pastor in Denver, and she used to tell her congregation that she was going to disappoint them. When newcomers came to the church, she always said, welcome to this congregation. We're going to disappoint you. I'm going to disappoint you. And I think those are wise words. If you are exploring this tradition, if you are exploring this church, know that we are a church. We're a group of human beings who get together and try to do our best, and sometimes our best just isn't good enough. And frankly, in church, sometimes we can't show up our best. And that's just true. And there are going to be times that we hurt one another, and there are going to be times when we miss an email, and there are going to be times when we disappoint one another. I know that that is true for me, and so just know we're really glad to have you with us. Welcome. And we are going to disappoint you sometimes. And so pilgrimage is organized around these practices that Bishop Curry has offered to the church. And It's nice because these frame out a different way of thinking about what it means to participate in a newcomer class. It's not just a download of knowledge of the things you need to know. There's some of that in the class, but it's more an offering of ways of being, of practices, of ways of engaging that we're trying to get done. It's not so much learning from the priest what is the Episcopal take on X, Y, or Z. It's more about what are some of the habits, what are some of the practices, what are some of the ways that Episcopalians have navigated this road of following Jesus, this road of the spiritual life. This isn't a class that is, Episcopal answers to Episcopal questions. It's more, what are some of the ways of surviving the road? What are some practices that we can carry with us so that we can find our way in this journey of faith? So I'm going to include in my email a link to the presiding bishop's introduction to the way of love, the practices of turn, learn, pray, worship, bless, go, and rest. This way of love that the presiding bishop offers to us. And then in the coming weeks, you're going to have an opportunity to talk about what does it mean to turn? What does it mean to be a part of a religious movement, part of a branch of the Jesus movement? What does it mean to be a love-spreading difference maker, as my friend, the priest Jimmy Bart says? You're gonna get a chance to wrestle with Scripture, to think through what does it mean to be a person who looks at the Bible. We're gonna talk about prayer. We're going to talk about personal prayer, how we engage with God in our day-to-day life. And we're also going to talk about corporate prayer, what we sometimes call worship. What is it that we do on Sunday mornings? And we'll talk through that, both what we've been doing in the pandemic and what is the Eucharist. This is a church called Holy Communion. So how does the Episcopal Church approach Holy Communion? What does it mean to gather around Christ's table and break bread and share a chalice? We'll also talk about blessing and going. That is to say, what are the ways we engage the world? Holy Communion is a church that is actively engaged in pursuing justice, in building a diverse and welcoming community, and in serving our neighbors. Some of how we bless, some of how we go into the world is informed by the ways we work for justice. And we'll talk about ways we've been involved in that work and ways Episcopalians have been involved in that work since the beginning of this country. Finally, we'll talk about rest. The spiritual life can be a pretty countercultural thing. That our way of life, that our way of love involves rest as a practice, involves intentional disengagement. It can be a bit counterintuitive, a bit against what our whole culture asks of us at times. And so we will spend some time talking about rest and talking about what it means to be a person who intentionally disengages and makes room to hear the presence of the Spirit of God. I really look forward to walking with you, and I really look forward to our conversations in the coming weeks. And I hope to see you on Zoom on Monday the 14th at 7:30. God bless. See you soon.